Hello, everyone. Welcome aboard the Disneyland Railroad. We are now beginning a grand circle tour around the Magic Kingdom.
Greetings, folks, and welcome aboard the Disneyland Hotel Tram.
Come on, kids. There's Frontierland. Let's hop over and see what's doing. I see Walt over there, too.
This is the panorama of Frontierland, a composite of the life and times of 100 years ago, a return to the heritage of the Old West.
And now, as we approach the station, please check for all your personal belongings and remain seated until the train comes to a complete stop. Thank you for joining us on the Walt Disney World monorail, and I hope you have a pleasant stay in the Magic Kingdom.
WDW Radio, your information station.
Hello, my friend, and welcome to the WDW Radio Show, your Walt Disney World information station. I am your host, Lou Mongello, and this is show number 511, and I'm here once again not only to help you have the best experiences when you go to the parks, but I also want to bring you a little bit of Disney magic, not just with the podcast, but with my videos, blog, live broadcasts on Facebook every Wednesday night, my books, audio tours, special events, meets of the month, every month in Walt Disney World and more. You can find everything over at WDWRadio.com, and I invite you to go to WDWRadio.com/boxpeople to be part of our conversation and community over on Facebook. So this week, I invite you to meet the man who went from a Disneyland Day One guest to a Disneyland Day Two cast member. A boy who went from influencing Walt to a man who managed the monorail in Walt Disney World and helped open Disneyland Paris. His name is Tom Nabbe, and his journey from a boy with a dream to Disney legend is both fascinating and inspiring. Join me as I sit down with Tom to talk about his unique career path, from stories of working with Walt to his window on Main Street, USA, and more. I'll then have the answer to our last Walt Disney World trivia question of the week, and I'll pose a new challenge for your chance to win a special Disney prize package. Then stay tuned to the end of the show, as I'll have more information about upcoming WDW Radio events, meets of the month, in Walt Disney World and on the road, as well as your voicemails. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this week's episode of the WDW Radio Show. Sitting here in the lobby of Disney's Polynesian Village Resort, I am reminded of a quote from a very, very wise man who talked about how you can design and create the most magical place on earth, but it really does take people to make those dreams a reality. I believe that wholeheartedly, and I am so incredibly honored and thrilled to be sitting with someone who I have known for years and whose story I'm excited to share with you in his own words. He is former Disneyland and Walt Disney World cast member. More importantly, he is a Disney legend. He is Mr. Tom Nabbe. Tom, welcome to the show.
Oh, well, thank you very much, Lou. Looking forward to it. We've been planning this for almost 4 years, I think, of getting together after a couple of events that we've had. And he said, oh, you need to get together so I can do an interview. And I think we played tag on several occasions. I guess we have to go back and start a little bit at the beginning. I was born in Santa Barbara, California, and we lived there for a while. And my mother married a gentleman by the name of Eddie Mora, and in turn we moved from Santa Barbara to Anaheim just in the late 40s. And 50 time frame. I was just starting elementary school, and I had dreams of grandeur of having a paper route, and I found a way that I could ride the bus up to the Coliseum in L.A. for the football season, sell newspapers, and I was able to earn enough money selling newspapers at the Coliseum to buy a bicycle. And once I bought a bicycle, then I could have a paper route, and so I ended up getting a paper route there in L.A. And I grew up in Florence, Los Angeles, which is right downtown Slauson and Alameda area, if some people know, just right around the block from Watts, so right in that area. And during this time frame, it was when Disneyland came on television on Wednesday evenings, and television was relatively a new thing. Had a little black and white TV with the big fish tank in front of it to magnify it and that. But my mother was a little bit of a starlet wannabe, and she used to go up to all the premiere openings up in Hollywood. And she's that lady that you see standing behind the barricades with the autograph book, looking for everybody to get autographs. And she used to take us to anything that she could get into, new TV shows, premiere openings, anything along that line. And she got very enamored with Walt and Walt's discussion of Disneyland and where it was being built in Anaheim. And she sort of looked at it, and my stepfather was a GI and eligible to get a GI home loan. And so she went down to Anaheim and checked it out and found a place in Anaheim about 7/10 of a mile from Disneyland. And she could qualify to buy the house on the GI Bill. So in December of 1954, we relocated from Anaheim, from L.A. to Anaheim. And when I got to Anaheim, the problem that I found is Anaheim was a very rural community during this time frame, and I couldn't get a newspaper route. Okay, I had my bicycle, but I couldn't get a newspaper route. You had to have a driver's license, and I was only 12 years old, so I wasn't able to drive a car, but I could get a Sunday paper route. And so I developed a route in the neighborhood. I had about 20 to 25 people that I'd deliver the Sunday Herald Examiner to. And I had a deal with the manager, newspaper manager, that any papers that he had left over, he come drop off. And what I did is I tried to get over to Disneyland, and they were working 3 shifts, the construction people. And I'd get over there early on Sunday morning and sell to the 3rd shift people that were going home Sunday papers. And I met a gentleman by the name of Ray Ahmet. Joe and Ray Ahmet had the concession on Main Street called Castle News. And they also were going to do a publication called the Disneyland News, which was going to be a monthly newspaper. It told the history of Disneyland, told a little bit of upcoming events and what was going on in that month. And all the lessees that had businesses in Disneyland would advertise in this paper. When Disneyland first opened up, there was only about 600 people that actually worked for Walt. There's the people in the administration, the people that in the rides and attractions area, the people in maintenance, but all the food locations and all the merchandise locations and everything were run by these lessees. And Joe's had the concession. He also had wheelchair and stroller rentals to go along with that. And it was one of those where you could get your name put in the headline of the paper, okay, or they did wanted posters and that type thing. So he had a very lucrative business going at that time for him. But he would show up every morning after the park opened. I guess getting a little ahead of it. I watched Disneyland grow out of nowhere. When we moved to Anaheim, they were just starting to build the Santa Ana Freeway. Still was Manchester Boulevard, and they had just finished building the overpass for Harbor Boulevard over the Santa Ana Freeway, and they were working on the overpass for Ball Road that went over the Santa Ana Freeway. So you could get up on the top of the overpass and actually look down into the construction site at Disneyland, and you're looking in on the backside of Tomorrowland. You see some of Fantasyland, and you could see the back of the buildings on Main Street, and you could see the train station and the castle.
So you literally watched Disneyland being built, from the outside in.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, especially every Sunday morning when I'm riding up there, stop on the top and see it. And then as it progressed, then they built the berm, and that restricted a little bit of the view. And then they landscaped the berm, and that blocked a little bit more of that view. But I was able to watch it. I remember myself and a couple other guys chasing the TWA rocket down Harbor Boulevard. It was on a flatbed truck. And we were sure. We chased it all the way to the harbor gate, and then it went inside the park. And so we rode back up to the top of the overpass because we were sure they were going to stand that rocket right up. Well, it took about a week and a half before they stood up the rocket in Tomorrowland. So once the park opened up, Ray told me, he says, come over every morning, and I'll be out in front of the gate. And if you sell 100 newspapers outside the gate, then you can continue to sell papers through the day. Just come to the office and pick them up. Okay, so that was a pretty good deal. So on July 17th, guess where we were? We were at Disneyland, and my mother had her autograph book, and that was a press opening, so all those celebrities were there, and she was getting those autographs. I was sort of down around the corner, staring through the fence at the Autopia, because I wanted to drive them Autopia cars. Now, I realize I'm 12, okay, so I really wanted to drive those Autopia cars. And back during this time frame, Highway Patrol was a very popular TV show, and they had 6 cars on the Autopia that were done in black and white and looked like the Highway Patrol, and they had flashing red lights and a siren, and they didn't have any governor on them. And I'll talk about that a little bit later here. So ran over there. Well, what happened is Danny Thomas was coming out. My mother asked Danny Thomas for an autograph, and he very cordially gave her an autograph, and he sort of leaned forward and he says, have you been in the park? And my mother says, oh, no, we weren't invited. He says, well, I got a couple extra tickets. Okay, and so he gave my mother 2 tickets, and sure enough, boy, she come found me, and we went into the park as guests of Danny Thomas on the press opening of Disneyland. Now, I have my ticket still, and if you look at the ticket, there's no serial number on the ticket. So if anybody ever asks you, Tom Nabbe as ticket number 1 to the press opening of Disneyland. Now, they were sort of broke down in time frames. My tickets say 5:30 p.m., I think, on them, and the ones in the archive say 2:30 p.m. So they were sort of just stagger people coming in. And you can sort of go back and say if they didn't number the tickets, they probably didn't know how many tickets they have. That gets back to that the Black Sunday analogy of working at Disneyland. So we got inside, and I remember we did ride the carousel. And I know we went to Carnation Gardens, and we got a soda at Carnation Gardens, not Carnation Gardens, but Carnation on Main Street. But I think that's the dirtiest, or trashiest, I think it would be a better word, the trashiest I've ever seen at Disney Park in my 50-year career. And I think Walt saw the same thing, because from that point forward, cleanliness was right on top of the list, and that's something he preached to everybody. And if you ever walked the park with Walt, he'd been over and he was picking up trash as he went through, and that's something you learn. My wife threatened to divorce me one time because I was picking up trash in the Florida Mall, but it's just one of those things that you can get conditioned on.
My wife says I pick up more garbage at Disney World than I do at my house.
Yeah, and it's funny how you get conditioned on those things. So On the 18th, my neighbor across the street, Doug Harmon, and I, we went over and stood in line and bought tickets to go in the park. Cost us 50 cents. Okay, that was a child's admission at that time frame. The next day, on the 19th of July, I went to work as a newsie. Okay, so I met Ray Ahmet out in front of the gate, got my 100 papers, sold those. That was a slam dunk. All those people standing in line waiting to buy tickets, and they needed. And people read newspapers back at that time frame. So I'd sell those 100 papers, and then I was able to get inside the park. Well, those of us that sold all our papers out early, we'd get inside the park and we'd run over to Tomorrowland. Okay, because what they needed was to get all the cars driven around and lined up for when the guests would come in on the Utopia. Okay, so we'd all run over there to drive the cars around to get them lined up, and every once in a while you get to drive one of them police cars. So that was sort of neat.
You had dreams coming true literally on day one. Like you were in Disneyland, working at Disneyland, and you got to drive the car that you were looking at 48 hours earlier through the fence.
Yes. Yeah, it was the end of the first summer, and I don't remember who, but somebody mentioned to me that Walt was going to build Tom Sawyer's Island on the rivers of America, and that you look just like Tom Sawyer, and you should ask Walt for a job.
Now, had anybody told you that before, that you look like Tom Sawyer, or was only because this was going to be coming to the park?
No, well, my mother would, the starlet wannabe would dress me up in a costume anyway. So I had cut off Levi's and a straw, because my complexion, I had a straw hat, and she puts the suspenders, and I had a blue and white checkered shirt, and that was the costume that I wore to sell newspapers. Okay, and people would say, "Oh, you look like Huck Finn," or "You look like Tom Sawyer," that type of thing. So it wasn't unusual for this person to tell me that you look like Tom Sawyer, and say, "Ask Walt for a job." And so Walt was in the park quite frequently back during that time frame. I think everybody aware, he had the apartment above the fire station. He'd drive down on Friday evenings from the studio and spend Friday evening, Saturday, Sunday morning, then he'd drive back up to the studio in there. So it was pretty available. And Walt used to walk around the park quite a bit. And he didn't look anything like the Walt Disney that you saw on TV. He usually had a couple days' growth of beard. He had a white Panama hat and a pair of gray trousers and a blue jacket, and he sort of walked around. So if you didn't really know it was Walt Disney, you wouldn't recognize Walt Disney. But I, in turn, I recognized Walt. And I approached him and introduced myself and told him I had heard he was going to build Tom Sawyer, and I looked just like Tom Sawyer, and he should hire me. Well, he didn't, because if he had said no, we wouldn't be here talking. But what he said is, "I'll think about it." And I sort of reflect a little bit back on that, and sort of realize that he may not have thought he was going to have a Tom Sawyer. He was going to build Tom Sawyer's Island, but sort of that the guests that went there were going to be Tom Sawyer, sort of like the people that went on Snow White. Okay, that you were actually Snow White. You didn't see Snow White in the attraction. So I think I convinced him into hiring a Tom Sawyer. So he said he'd think about it. And so for the next year, anytime I could find Walt, and I asked him if he was still thinking about hiring me as Tom Sawyer. I remember one conversation that we had that he told me that he could probably put was it a dummy or mannequin? I think it was a mannequin over on the island that wouldn't be leaving every 5 minutes for a hamburger, a hot dog, or a Coke, that type of thing.
So I want to stop you for a second, because I think there's something really interesting and profound about what you said was, on day one you approached Walt, and throughout the year you approached Walt. I think the fact that not only was he present, but that he was approachable, and that you as a young boy didn't look at him as somebody who was on TV, that you felt comfortable enough to approach him, I think says a lot, not only about you, but I think about Walt himself, in that he allowed himself to not be removed from the cast members, but to be accessible.
Well, but you look at this whole time frame. Walt had a lot of child actors and actresses. The Mickey Mouse Club was very strong. He had two daughters, okay, and so he was fairly comfortable talking with kids. The other thing is he'd listen to you. Okay, he wouldn't cut you off. He wouldn't poo-poo you, shoo you away, or what. He'd listen to what you had to say, and then he'd address what you said. And that's like I say. When I asked him to hire me, Tom Sawyer, he said, "No, but I'll think about it. It's not one of those."
And so, was that something that was like you woke up in the morning and like, today I'm going to find Walt and I'm going to ask him to hire me, or was that something that just sort of came to you on the spot?
I don't remember waking up with it and having it strike me as something that I needed to do that day. It just materialized. I was in the park, and Walt was in the park, and I pretty much had a goal. I accomplished one of those just recently when I was made a Disney legend. Okay, that's the same time that Peter Jennings passed away, and Bob Iger went to Peter Jennings' funeral, and Marty Sklar hosted the Legends program. And so I didn't get a photo op with him. But that went on my bucket list, and it took me 12 years. But this last D23 at Disneyland, I got my photo op with Bob Iger. Okay, and we were walking up to the Legends luncheon, and I saw Bob, and I said, "Bob, I didn't get my picture with you back when I was made a legend. Would you pose with me now?" He said, "Absolutely." And so I ended up getting. So I'm sort of tenacious along that line. I've been that way all my life, and maybe if it isn't a good thing this week, in 2 weeks from now, it's a good thing. So you always keep those things in the back of your mind, so you can in turn inject those a while. I think we talked over lunch about a couple of those things that we did that back in the 50s or whenever.
So you go to Walt and you sort of plant this seed in his head that it wasn't an idea that he had. You really came up with the concept. How does it go from seeing him in the park and planting that idea one day to, him? How does it go to you actually becoming?
Well, I was in the Penny Arcade. I remember this vividly, spending my hard-earned paper money playing the baseball machine in the Penny Arcade because I absolutely love that baseball machine. And a gentleman by the name of Dick Nunes came up and tapped me on the shoulder. And Dick at that time frame was the supervisor of Frontierland. And Dick said, and I know you know Dick, but when Dick says, "Come with me," you don't argue with Dick, you go with Dick. So Dick says, "Come with me, Tom." And so I went with Dick. And
you're probably not thinking this is something good at this point when Dick Nunes says,
"No, he used to throw me out of the park." He used to accuse me of sneaking in. I didn't sneak in, but I got in there illegally. But in turn, so I'm walking with Dick, and we were going over to Frontierland, and this is when the chicken plantation was still there in the Indian Village. You walked over this little bridge, and the Frontierland train station was there, chicken plantation, and the Indian Village was all compacted back in that area, and Walt and Morgan Evans, Bill Evans, the landscape architect for Disneyland and Walt Disney World, were coming off the island on a raft. And Walt said, when he got to the dock and stopped, he says, "You still want to be Tom Sawyer?" And I said, "Absolutely, Mr. Disney, I do." And he says, "Well, super, you need to get a work permit and a Social Security card." And okay. And he says, "Once you do that, I'll put you to work as Tom Sawyer." So getting the Social Security card wasn't any problem. I just went to the office in Santa Ana and filled out the form and got the Social Security card. Okay, now the work permit was a little bit more of a challenge. I had to go to school, and I had to get a form. And then I had to take that form to the employment office, and then the employment office had to fill out the form and answer all the questions. And then I had to return that form back to school, and then in turn they would issue me a work permit. Okay, so in turn, I got my form, and I went, and the employment office for Disneyland was in an old house on West Street, just opposite of the Disneyland Hotel. And that was the employment office, and I went inside, and lady there, and I told her my story, that that Walt had hired me to be Tom Sawyer, and she gave me one of these nods, oh yeah, okay, and asked me to have a seat. And this side of the story I hear from Dick is that she went and told Chuck Whalen, who is the manager of employment, that I have this kid out here, and that Dick Nunes knows all about it. And so Chuck picked up the phone and called Dick and said, Dick, I got this kid over here that says that Walt hired him to be Tom Sawyer. And Dick said, yeah. I took a little bit of a deep breath and told Chuck, I says, Chuck, Walt did hire him. Let your conscience be your guide. And at that point, all my paperwork got filled out, and I went to work as Tom Sawyer. Now, what did Tom Sawyer do? Okay, well, first of all, they assigned me to entertainment to work for Tommy Walker, who was the director of entertainment back at that time. That only lasted about 2 weeks because they didn't know what the hell to do with me. So they gave me back to the rides and attractions side back to Dick Nunes. So under him, one of the conditions of employment was I had to bring in my report card. And if I didn't maintain a C average, I was no longer employed. And I know Dick reviewed I think Walt assigned Dick to review my report card. But so in turn, I posed for a lot of pictures. We had stocked the rivers of America with bluegill and catfish and sun perch, and had the area. There was 2 piers right across from the landing for the Mark Twain. And they had that area netted off, and that's where the fish were stocked in that area.
Because you could actually fish at that point. And it wasn't catch and release, right?
Oh no! At this point, it was catch and clean, and part of Tom Sawyer's job was to clean the fish if the guests wanted it clean. And I had some plastic bags, and in turn, I cleaned the fish. Well, that didn't last very long either. Maybe 2 months if it lasted that long, from June, July. By August, old smelly fish had showed up in places where you didn't want old smelly fish. So we went from a catch and clean to a catch and release. And I went through and debarbed all the hooks. But there was 2 fishing piers. I'd have 25 fishing poles on each of the piers. Had worms for bait. Had little cans nailed up around the railing, and would put topsoil in the cans, and I'd put the worms actually came packaged in Smart Pills, rabbit poop. Yeah, so you had to take them from there and put them into the.
So you were doing a little bit of procurement as well as sort of guest. Because really, what was your title? I mean, did you have a?
I was called a guest aide. Sound like
I didn't know what else to call you, right?
Yeah, sounds like a good job description. And like I say, I posed for a lot of pictures, baited a lot of fishing hooks, repaired a lot of fishing poles, and I was either Tom Sawyer or Huckleberry Finn, whatever the guests wanted me to be. When you really look at it, Huckleberry Finn had the fire red hair and the freckles. Tom was sort of more of a sandy blonde kid. But
so while you're sitting there and you're deboning fish in the middle of the summer.
Degutting.
I'm sorry, degutting. When you're degutting these fish in Disneyland in the middle of summer, are you like, yeah, this is exactly what I hoped I was going to be doing when I walked up to Walt?
No, but it was, I don't think that ever went through it was part of the job. That was explained to me as part of the job, so that was acceptable. Back in those days, you did a lot of things that, you were just, that's the job, do it.
You want to pose for pictures, you're also going to clean some fish.
Yeah. So, and I would respond to either Huckleberry Finn or Tom Sawyer. I didn't respond to Becky Thatcher or Indian Joe. And I did that all through junior high school and high school. I remember one time Walt came over to the park and early one morning, and he said, Tom, I'm gonna rehab Tom Sawyer's Island. Let's walk the island, and I want you to tell me what you think the island needs. And I'm going, okay, that's pretty good. Now, later in my life, we were told, thou shalt not art direct. But during this time, I hadn't had that speech yet. So we were walking the island, and I told, Walt, that we had Lookout Point. Okay, and I told Walt, I said, well, where Lookout Point is, we need a tree house. Okay, and then we have Fort Wilderness, and we needed an escape tunnel from Fort Wilderness. And so when the island came back up from rehab in 1958, okay, we had an escape tunnel from Fort Wilderness. We had a tree house up on the top of the island. We also had merry-go-round rock, teeter-totter rock, castle rock, but those weren't part of my ideas. I think those were Walt's ideas. Okay, so in turn, I'll take credit for art directing the treehouse and the escape tunnel.
But did it sink into you then? I mean, obviously, certainly now that Walt didn't dismiss you as a 12-year-old boy with silly ideas. He actually took your ideas and he executed on them. So when the island reopens and you look at it, was there that sense of pride, like I did that, like that was all my idea?
I was very impressed that we had a treehouse and escape tunnel, but I think Walt's philosophy all through his life has always been employee involvement. All the people that worked at WED was people that he'd go talk to and say, what would you like to do? And then he'd say, okay, well, you're going to go to work for WED, and you can go do what you want to do, like the Bob Gurrs and the Wathel Rogers and all those people out there. and Walt listened to a lot of people. When he was in there in the morning, he was talking to the landscape people. He was talking to the security people. That's another one. When the park opened, security was a lessee. It was Burns Detective Agency. And I hear the story on one of them that Walt got up out walking the park one night out of the apartment, and one of the Burns Detective Agency guards approached him and said, who are you? And he said, well, I'm Walt Disney. And he says, I don't care who you are. You can't be out here at this time of night. And at that point is we no longer had Burns Detective Agency. We had had Disney Security. So those are those stories that goes along that line. But Walt listened to the guests. Walt listened to the people. He was always asking, how can we do it better? What do we need? And trying to get a whole feel for what was going on during that time frame.
And I think, just as a quick aside, like so much about the story you've told so far from a business and entrepreneurial perspective. So you were the young consummate entrepreneur from a young age. You had that hustle, you had that drive. You certainly had the courage to be able to go for the thing that you wanted, whether it was the paper route to get to the bicycle, to get to Disneyland, to get to become Tom Sawyer / Huck Finn / Fish Gutter, to being able to go to somebody who was the head of this company, who not just pacified you by listening, but actually paid attention and took the recommendations that you and others made to heart. I mean, I think there's a lesson to be taken away from there, not just as an employee, but certainly as an employer, that, you are not the end-all, be-all, that sometimes the people who work for you and with you, are able to contribute in remarkable ways.
Yeah, well, I think part of, Lou, what you have to understand is I didn't go, I went and found Walt, but Walt came to me also. So it was one of those. It was sort of a two-way street. So he was soliciting my input versus me soliciting him to hire me. So it was sort
which is even more impressive, right?
Yeah. It was sort of a mutual relationship there. The last time I remember seeing Walt, one of the deals that you're always looking for is that if Walt got totally inundated with people wanting autographs and that type of thing, he wasn't that familiar on how to get out or backstage in the park. And I remember it was in the early 60s. It was after Mary Poppins. So it was in the early 60s. It was in Frontierland, and he was sort of inundated, and we were in between the the Oaks Tavern and the malt shop there with the silver banjo, and so I helped Walt get backstage, and I told him, I'm Tom Nabbe. You hired me to be Tom Sawyer. He said, oh yeah, I remember that, and so we talked for a little bit, but that was my last encounter with Walt, was back at that time frame.
Did it, as a kid, did the scope and the magnitude of who you, not just who you were working for, but who you were able to have such personal contact with, did it impact you then, or it wasn't until maybe later on that the importance and the magnitude of who he was and the relationship that you had with him kind of sunk in?
Well, you saw him every night on Wednesday night on television, so he was very much a celebrity. And understand, my mother was enamored with celebrities.
Did she ask you for Walt? Did she ask you to get his autograph?
She tried a couple times. She didn't have that autograph. All those autograph books ended up with my younger sister. So that was one of the things that I really wanted, but that didn't materialize. But yeah, a lot of it is being at the right place at the right time, and knowing what the opportunity is and seizing that opportunity. I look at today's world, and there's a lot of people out there that are very focused. I was very open to change. A lot of people have their entire goals laid out for them, and they know if they don't do, if I don't make director in 5 years, I'm going to go someplace else and try. Okay, so those are things that you learn and dealing with the people. I think that's part of one of the things that I really feel so satisfied out of my years of employment is the folks that I've worked with, that I've watched and mentored and watched them grow and mature into professions either within the Disney experience or outside in the real world. Back in the every day was a new record, a new learning curve, a new way of doing it. There wasn't a college of hospitality like there is today. You can't go to UCF and go to Rosen's College of Hospitality. There wasn't a college of hospitality back there, and you learned as you went forward, and you had some great teachers and great mentors. I think one of the my stepfather took off when I was fairly young, so a lot of the people at Disneyland filled in that void for me, and became my surrogate fathers and mentors through my life. That's how I ended up in Florida. Is one of those guys was going to be the operations manager for the transportation operation here in Florida, and he wanted me to open a monorail system for him. So,
because after being Tom in Disneyland, you stayed in Disneyland for a while. You had other roles and responsibilities there too, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. That first summer was a slam dunk. I turned 18 in 1961. I was a ride operator, and I had learned how to drive a raft long before I became a raft. I used to come in early in the morning, and the guys would teach me how to drive and that type of thing. So I was a very experienced raft operator before I was old enough to technically drive a raft. And so I started out very, very quickly on Tom Sawyer's Island, and actually I was a working foreman 4 days a week, what they call relief foreman. The day foreman had 2 days off, the night foreman had 2 days off, so I would fill and cover their shifts. And so I was in a leadership role fairly early. And then that Disneyland was closed on Mondays and Tuesdays in the wintertime. So on a Sunday evening, my supervisor at that time, Jim Hott, and Jim came over and handed me a script, and he says, memorize this, you go to work on the jungle on Wednesday morning. And so show up at the jungle on Wednesday morning, and so I stopped by wardrobe and changed my Tom Sawyer's costume for a Jungle Cruise costume, and showed up and made 3 or 4 trips And then from that point forward, I was a jungle skipper. And there were two attractions that you knew you were going to work as a male operator. That had the largest manpower was the submarines and the Jungle Cruise. Okay, those two attractions had the most amount of male employees. So you were gonna work those as you worked up through the seniority list. Then you were able to work on other attractions. With Disneyland being closed on Monday and Tuesdays, so you had a schedule on Saturday, you had a schedule on Sunday, you had a schedule on Wednesday. So it was usually 8 hours, and 4 hours. And if Wednesday was busy, they would extend the shift down. So I was having trouble making my rent on 20 hours a week. So what I would do is I would come in on Thursday mornings and on Friday mornings and sit in the operations office and wait for people to call in sick. Okay, so in turn, a lot of attractions I didn't know because I was there. They went out and trained me. So the next time somebody called in sick, I was trained and ready to go on.
So you sort of made yourself the relief pitcher that just sat there on deck. You know, whenever somebody was going to be sick, you were going to be the guy that they went to.
Well, yeah. Well, that, in order to get the dollars to do that too, so I learned a lot of attractions that first year very, very, very quick, and worked almost every attraction in the park with the exception of the monorail and steam trains. And the reason being that those two attractions were run by Retlaw. And Retlaw is Walter spelled backwards, and Retlaw was a company that the Disney family owned. Okay, and they actually ran the monorail and steam trains, and the situation, in order to work on the monorail, they wanted this image, and you had to be 6 foot tall. Well, I was never going to be 6 foot tall, so that's why I never worked on the monorail.
I feel your pain. Don't worry, I got. So you are there for a number of years. So you meet your wife eventually at Disneyland, yeah?
Well, yeah, we're right about that time frame. In 1965, all the lessee contracts started to expire. Some were 5-year contracts. A good portion were 10-year contracts. And all the fast food operations at Disneyland was run by UPT, United Paramount Theaters, which was a subsidiary of ABC. How things go around and come around, that type of thing. And their contract ran out. And they took about 50 of us and trained us in management in fast food operations. And so I went to work in Oaks Tavern in Frontierland, and my wife-to-be was the lead, counter lead in there. Right at the same time frame, I got an invite from my other uncle, not Uncle Walt, Uncle Sam. Uncle Sam wanted me to participate in a little bit of a war in Vietnam, and there was no way I wasn't going to pass the physical, and so I sort of we do some dumb things in our life, but I sort of said, if I'm going to go to Vietnam, I'm in my mind I want to be the best trained, and as far as I'm concerned, the Marine Corps is going to train me the best to survive. So I went down and enlisted in the Marine Corps. And I enlisted for a 3-year hitch, and the reason being, a 3-year hitch, I had no reserve time. It was 3 years active duty, 3 years inactive duty, because the people that were in active reserves weren't real high on the schedulers list, because they had to go play soldier 1 weekend a month, and they had to do a summer camp and that type of thing. So I didn't want that obligation, and so I ended up going in the Marine Corps, and I had orders to Da Nang. And I had everything all packed up, and I had they made an aviation radio repairman out of me. Somehow my aptitude was strong in electronics, and I ended up by signing up for a 3-year hitch, I was eligible for all the schooling that a 4-year hitch would have. So I ended up going to radio repair school. The incentive to graduate from radio repair school was that if you failed, they made a radio operator out of you, and the life expectancy of a radio operator was rather short. so he didn't want to be a radio operator. So I passed, and I ended up getting promoted to corporal out of school, and I had orders to Da Nang, and had everything packed up and going home on it was a St. Patrick's Day weekend. I had the Battle of Highway 101, Pacific Coast Highway. A drunk hit me head on and tried to kill me and put me in the hospital for 5 months. And then from there, I ended up going back to school. And this is the same time that Walt passed away. The New York World's Fair and Walt's passing happened all during the time that I was in the Marine Corps. So I ended up getting mustered out of the Marine Corps, went back to Cal State Fullerton, dreams of grandeur of being an electronical engineer. About a year and a half into schooling at Cal State Fullerton, I realized I wasn't going to be a good electronical engineer, and what I really wanted to be was in rides and attractions at Disney, and they started interviewing there for all the people that come to Florida. So I went through a round of interviews, and I ended up getting promoted into management in 1970. And just prior to that, I was home on leave, and I ran into a mutual friend of my wife, and she gave me Janice's number, and I called her, and we started dating, and we got married in June of 1968.
So the everything the plane is literally in flight in terms of Walt Disney World coming into being. How does it come to pass that you? Because I want you to tell the story of not just how you literally made your way out to Florida, but how did it come to pass that you were going to come out here and be part of the opening team for Walt Disney World?
Well, first, I only thought I was going to be in Florida for 3 years. I had the opportunity to interview to open the monorail system here with Pete Crimmings, who I had worked for off and on through the years and was one of my mentors. And the company was going to build a ski area in Mineral King, which was just south of Sequoia National Forest, which is about halfway between Los Angeles and San Francisco. So that was my goal, and to go to work in transportation and to make a name for myself in transportation. And then the whole concept of Mineral King was they were going to build a parking area in a village, and everybody got transported from the parking area up to the village. So transportation was a very key element and role there. So in turn, I came down to Florida. I'd never been east of Phoenix. My mother told me we went to Chicago on a train, but I don't remember that. But Janice and I made that decision, and I had 2 Volkswagens at the time. And so we decided to drive a Volkswagen and tow a Volkswagen. Had a dark blue convertible and had a yellow Volkswagen. And in the back of the yellow Volkswagen had a sign put in it, 2 more bugs for Florida. And so we drove cross country. It took us about 6 days to drive here. It was rather interesting. It was like 30 miles an hour up the overpass and 70 miles an hour down the overpass. The one that was really scary was coming through the Mobile Tunnel. Okay, so coming down in the tunnel, I'm staying up with the traffic. Well, coming up on the other side of the tunnel, I'm running a little slow, and I get over and clear, and right there are toll booths. Okay, and I got the brakes on, I got the emergency, and we're sliding through, and slow right through the toll plaza. I had to get out and go back and pay for both the cars to go back and get in, but that was a little scary on that one.
So you're again, this dream of wanting to operate the monorail comes to fruition in a different time, in a different way, in a different place, because it takes you coming out to what little there was of Orlando at that time to help sort of manage the monorail operations and part of the construction too?
Yeah, well, there's a whole concept that was developed during New York World's Fair called PICO, Project Installation Coordination. Okay, and what they do is they take people out of the operating side, and you get assigned into the construction and project side, and your coordinators sort of go first, or whatever needed to help along that line. And then as you hire people, you train those people, and then when the attraction opens up, then you become the management group that operates that rides and attraction. So that was sort of the philosophy and the monorail was my attraction. And we had the two beams, the express beam and local beam, the contemporary, and while we're sitting in here in the Polynesian, were the two hotels on what we called the local beam, and the express beam went from the TTC, Ticket and Transportation Center, to the Magic Kingdom. Okay, so that was the concept behind the monorail system.
So if the stories that I've heard are true, you very much were a hands-on person when it comes to your monorail. And when I say hands-on, I mean not boots on the ground, I mean boots on the beam. Is it true that you used to walk the beams?
Well, U.S. Steel built the two hotels and the golf resort, and also a complex called the Court of Flags down on I-4 and Sand Lake, right in that area. Well, they were very difficult to deal with. Yeah, thank God that Roy bought them out right after opening, but they were very difficult to go. And it would take me sometimes as long as 4 hours just to get clearance, okay, to get into the hotel to check my stations. Okay, past their security people, because I didn't work for U.S. Steel. I worked for Disney. Okay, so I found the easiest way for me to check the stations was to walk the beam. To the Polys, no big deal. Maybe 2 city blocks to the Polynesian. Now the beam is 30 inches wide, so it's wider than this table. Okay, so
30 inches isn't a lot when you're 60 feet above the ground.
Well, yeah, and you don't do it in high winds and lightning and thunderstorms but in turn I could get up into the contemporary very very quickly. The problem that we had was the two beams that were on the north end of the contemporary were all the beams that you look that have a curved bottom to them. Those were fabricated in Tacoma, Washington, and shipped here by rail to Taft, and from Taft they were trapped over to property. Well, the two beams that were the 110-foot long beams were on the north end of the Contemporary Hotel. The train went right and the beams went straight ahead, and had a snowstorm right after that, so we couldn't find the beams. So they had to, in turn, refabricate those beams. So we're about almost 3 months late in closing the loop on the monorail to have a closed loop. So we did a lot of training and a lot of shuttling, going back and forth. But in turn, I checked the stations out and in a very short period of time. Just by clicking up there, and back when we originally opened the monorail system, the monorail, the parking lot, watercraft, and the submarines were all on the same radio frequency. And what we didn't realize is that the batteries on the radios in the monorail had a very short transmit life on it, so you could only transmit maybe 2-3 minutes and you're out about it. You could listen, but you couldn't transmit. And I remember one breakdown. I had a young lady in the train, and she did her transmission, and then we couldn't talk to her. And so the easiest thing was to walk out on the parallel, because beams are parallel, walk out on the parallel beams, have her open up the door. I talked her through what she needed to do, and had the work tractor come out and tow her train in and get the guests off and that type of thing. But it was one of those things that you did.
Without a harness, you're not safety rigged, you're just walking the beams.
Yeah.
It was a different day and age, right?
Yeah, it was a different world back in that time frame. I would say if the director knew that I was watching, he'd probably be a little
right.
Yeah, a little upset with me. But those are things. We rode in cars without seatbelts. We drank water out of the hose in the yard. There was a lot of stuff that we that we did back there that you wouldn't dare do in today's world.
And there actually were plans, because people still to this day talk about expanding the there were plans at one point, right, to expand the monorail out to like 192, like an industrial park, weren't there?
Well, if you look at the entire project, okay, the Magic Kingdom and what you see today, I think, was in phase 35 or 37 or whatever. But in between the Magic Kingdom complex and what was proposed as the original Epcot project, there was a whole industrial park and an airport. Okay, so all those things were in the master plan. Now, as you know, the master plan didn't get totally built. But I've talked about it. But when you're the monorail is very costly. And the advantage here was you have sort of a restricted group. Everybody's got to either ride the monorail back then, or the Osceolas, or the trams. Okay, didn't have the bus fleet we have today. Didn't have the ferries that we had today. Didn't have 10 monorails as we have today. 10 6-car monorails versus 6 5-car monorails. Yes, so things have changed, and going forward.
And so your role in Walt Disney World changed too. Again, it's interesting going from a very on-stage presence as Tom/Huck to sort of more backstage with the monorails, but that was not your only role in Disney, right? You ended up doing more in terms of logistics and whatnot.
Well, I sort of got tagged as a nuts and bolts guy, and sort of got tagged as the guy that you wanted on your team. New construction and new openings. And so after we opened the monorail up, I ended up decided to build Tom Sawyer's Island and Frontierland Liberty Square and the Richard F. Irvine. So I went on that project. The minute we wrapped up that project in 1973, went on a project to rebuild Tomorrowland. When Tomorrowland opened up, it was pretty scarce of what was in the Tomorrowland area. And so we put in the Wedway, the Star Jets, Carousel of Progress, and Space Mountain. So 73 to 75, and then once we opened all that up, then the decision was to take 20,000 Leagues down. And when we originally opened 20,000 Leagues, all the art directors that came out here went to Silver Springs and were enamored with the clarity of the water and everything. And so the decision was to pump the water out of the aquifer through 20,000 Leagues. From 20,000 Leagues, it went into the moat. And from the moat, it went to the Jungle Cruise. And from the Jungle Cruise, it went into the Rivers of America. From the Rivers of America, it went down the Lightboat Channel into the Seven Seas Lagoon. And from the Seven Seas Lagoon, it got distributed over the 55 miles of drainage canals that are on property. Okay, well, that was great. The only trouble is you didn't have the volume of water coming and being pumped through the 20K that you had coming out of the springs at Silver Springs. And they started getting pockets of dead area in that, and algae started growing. So it finally made the decision to enclose 20K and chlorinate it and filter it. And so we did that in 1975. And so once we wrapped that up and opened that back up and got that running, had the opportunity to go back to Frontierland, because we were going to build this little train over there called Big Thunder. Okay, and so we built Big Thunder, and just right as we opened up Big Thunder, there was another little project down the road that got funded and ready to go. And if you remember when I said earlier, I only came to Florida to be here for 3 years. Well, we were going to build an area, a ski area in Mineral King. Well, that sort of got shut down by the Sierra Club because of the roadway that had to be built there, and the Sierra Club didn't want that roadway built, and they petitioned. So that project moved to an area above Truckee, California, which is just north of Lake Tahoe, and that clicked along quite well until there was a little conflict of people going on our board from in order to get the permits and everything going on there. And Cod Walker at that point basically said, no, we aren't going to build any ski areas, and all the monies that we have, I'm going to focus on the Epcot project. So if you sort of look at it as Disneyland was Walt's park, Walt Disney World Magic Kingdom was sort of Roy's park. Walt's dreams and ideas and that type of thing, but Roy brought it into this world, and Card decided that Epcot was going to be his park. If you go a little farther down the road, then the studio and Animal Kingdom ties into Eisner and his parks. Shanghai is Iger's park. So you say everybody, and I sort of look at the company sort of has a 20-year cycle. So in the 20s, Disney was developed. In the 40s, went through World War II, and it almost cost the company. Okay, in the 60s, Walt passed away. In the 80s was the end of the Eisner era and the Iger era, and we're getting ready for another one down the road. But I sort of look at big 20-year cycles along that. Now, I forgot where we were going in the conversation, then I went out into the Neverland. Oh, I got a call and asked if I wanted to be involved in the Epcot project, and I said, "Oh, absolutely." Norm Durgis and Bill Sullivan were going to be the guys out there, and I thought I was going to be a pavilion coordinator, but in turn, Norm wanted me to run a warehouse complex that they had. We were in the process of developing what we called an item tracking system. For OFI. OFI is owner-furnished items. So anything that we bought for show installation, it was basically going to be installed by Buena Vista Construction, was called OFI. And we would tag and label that. So all the show set pieces, all the props, all the animation, all that stuff fell in that category. And what was going to happen was there was going to be a warehouse. That project, it was scheduled for later installation. Anything that came and could be installed was directly to the site to be installed. And I had a crew of people that were working for me, and that's what we did. And so in turn went through the opening of Epcot. That was a real, had gone through through the opening of Disneyland as a child. Went through the opening of Walt Disney World as a Magic Kingdom as a young adult. And Epcot now, I had the chance to use all those skill sets to go forward, and it just fit like a glove right in there and headed down the road. I adapted very quickly to the warehouse operation. I sort of took that in my mind, and it's sort of almost like any ride or attraction or running a parking lot. Right. You got to bring things in, you got to park it, you got to be able to get. So that's the way. So I was real easy to equate to that. This owner furnished. We gave everything an item number. All the shows were built and bought off in California. They were built in Tahunga. Our directors would buy them off, and then they would disassemble them, number and label them, load them on a truck, and send them to Florida, either to be warehoused or to be installed. And they get to Florida, and a good portion of it is we handled about $400 million worth of materials through the warehouse. You'd open the back of the truck and you look and you go, God, how did they get that in there? Okay. Then the next question is, how are we going to get it out of there and not break it? Understand, this is a one-of-a-kind item. You can't go to Home Depot and buy another one. So in turn, that was the challenge that went along that, and we went all through that process. And I think, if you've heard the Storming of the Magic Kingdom or that type thing, that, Epcot coming real close to bankrupting this company, and it did not hit the return on investment. And so all of us that went through that, opening that process and getting through that relief, all of a sudden got into another of didn't know if you're going to have a job tomorrow. Okay, but thank God that Roy Disney went out and did his thing and got the Bass Brothers on board and made the decision to hire Frank Wells and Michael Eisner and brought those people on and got everything coming out of it. Right at that time frame, I made a major career change. I went from being in rides and attractions and guest-oriented to the support side of the business. I liked what I did in the warehouse portion of it during Epcot, and I sort of enjoyed that and had a job opportunity to go into warehousing for Walt Disney World. And I did that for the last 22 years of my career.
So your 3-year stint at Walt Disney World did not just take you from Anaheim to Orlando, but somehow your circuitous journey also took you to Paris, correct?
Yes. After we went through that whole process of storming the Magic Kingdom, getting everything back online, and this property just exploded with hotels and hotel rooms, and the stock went from chunk change up into the hundreds again, and the whole decision that Michael made was to build a park in Paris, so we. In turn, I had the director of distribution for Disneyland Paris. Let's say it was called Euro Disney back at that time frame. Over for almost a year, training with us, and he felt pretty comfortable. And I had gone over there for a couple visits to warehouse operations, sit through some planning and concept process, but I wasn't slotted to go to Paris. In the latter part of, actually the 1st of January of 1992, I get a telephone call from my boss, Howard Rowland, and Howard Rowland's in Paris, and this is on a Friday morning. And Howard basically says, Tom, I want you in Paris on Monday. I want you to meet with me and Paul Mallet. And I said, okay. He says, I got the travel company working on tickets, and we'll see you Monday. And sure enough, tickets showed up, went to the airport, packed up a bag, and I got on an airplane and came to Paris and got off in Orly Airport and found a car and drove downtown Paris and met Paul and Howard and Howard said Paul Mallet, who was the director of purchasing, who had run the warehouse system here, who I worked for. Basically says, Tom, what I want you to do is be a liaison and help John Louis get through opening and do pretty much what you did for Epcot, okay, here in Paris. And so that's what I did. So in turn, we went, I finally left the end of April. The park opened April 12th. It's hard to believe. It's only 3-4 weeks from now, and we're going to go through a birthday for Paris. But able to go through that process, got back here, went through Modern Material Handling, which is a publication associated with warehousing and that type of thing. Came to us and wanted to, and this is right at Walt Disney World's 25th anniversary, came to us and wanted to do a little short story on the 25th anniversary. And so, okay, so they came in and we showed them what we did. And they got so involved in what we were doing, then in turn this little 2-3 page article turned into a 20-page article and was their lead publication for that year and won the awards. That they just didn't quite understand how we could handle a city of about 250,000 people back at that time on a daily basis. So if you take everybody that's staying on property, everybody that's coming into the property as a day guest, and all the food and all the merchandise and all the equipment to keep that going on a daily basis comes through the warehouse operation. So they were very impressed with that.
And that's, even as a kid, that was something that always impressed me, how this place really is a real working city that operates 24/7, 365, and the logistics of not just the manpower and the guests, but of the things that we don't think about as guests. You know, all the things that need to populate the shelves and the stores and the restaurants is an incredible undertaking. But eventually your very long journey from, 12-year-old Tom Sawyer and Huck Finn to coming back to Walt Disney World, you decided it's time for it to come to an end, and you retire what year?
I retired in 2003. I had hired a financial advisor back when we did a living trust, and he did very well, and Mike Wicks, and so I asked him. My 60th birthday was coming right around. June is a very active month for me. My birthday is in June. My company anniversary date is in June. My wedding date is in June. My retirement date is in June. Father's Day is in June. So June was a very active month for me. And I basically told him I'd like to retire in June. So if you ever retire from the Walt Disney Company, you want to retire from the last day of the month. Okay, that way you get your pay for that week, and then the first day of the next month you get your retirement check. Okay, so I in turn made that decision, and so told my boss, that I had planned on retiring, and he sort of said, "Well, Tom, what would you like as a retirement gift?" And I told him, I said, if I qualify, what I'd really like is a window on Main Street at Disneyland and one at Walt Disney World. And so. Hey, but I thought that just sort of went this way. So about 2-3 weeks later, he comes back and he says, "Look, couldn't do the Disneyland thing, but it got your window on Main Street at Walt Disney World. So if you ever come into the Magic Kingdom at Walt Disney World and you look at the cinema, my window is right above it on the right-hand side."
And what does your window read?
It is Sawyer Fence Painting. And proprietor Tom Nabbe, Anaheim, California, Lake Buena Vista, Florida. Super. It's one of those things. So I thought that was I thought that was the height, the la creme de creme, type thing. And my goal every 5th anniversary of Disneyland is to be on Main Street at Disneyland on July 17th. So we were out there for the 50th anniversary. A couple previous trips, the mouse paid for it, but most all the trips, I've paid for it. And so we were there, and the Disneyland Alumni Club was having a dinner dance. And so we went. I paid my admission, went to the dinner dance, and we were there, and a gentleman by the name of Jim Cora. Jim Cora retired as the president of Disney International, and had worked with Jim on opening here at Walt Disney World, and had worked a little bit alongside Jim in Paris. And he sort of said, "Hey, Tom, I'll see you in September." And anybody that ever worked with Jim Cora, he's one of these guys that'll sort of toss out and see if he can hook you on something. That if he hook you, he'll play it to the hilt. So I said, "No, Jim, I'll be back here in 5 years, but I don't plan on being back here in September." He says, "Oh no, you and Sully and I are going to be inducted as Disney Legends." I said, "Oh, okay. Well, but I didn't bite on that." So when I got back to the hotel room, I called my sister, who was house sitting for us here in Florida. And I said, "Is there a letter there from the studio?" And she said, "Yeah." And I said, "Would you open it up and tell me what it says?" And she says, "Oh, it's something about you being inducted as a Disney legend in September." And so Cora wasn't pulling my leg. It was a true thing. So in turn, the Disney Legend program was very much Roy E. Disney's thing. He was just totally enamored in that. I think I mentioned earlier in the conversation that when I got inducted as a legend was the same time that Peter Jennings passed away. And so Marty Sklar and Roy hosted the Legends Luncheon and induction. And I had the opportunity to talk with Roy a little bit. I'm a sailor, okay, and Roy's a sailor. And so we talked about sailing, and my boat's 16 foot long, his boat's 160 feet. But
the same thing.
Yeah. Sailing is sailing. So in turn, that one, and it's really nice to be a living legend. The alternative sucks. But I had the opportunity. What they do is they have a clay mold there at the ceremony, and you do your palm prints and you sign it, and then they cast a bronze plaque, and then there's a Legends Plaza at the studio, and it gets hung in the studio. So the next trip out for Disneyland's 55th, I had called the archives, and because I hadn't seen my plaque, and asked to borrow his Legends award, and we went out to the gardens and took some photos out in that area of myself and my plaque. So that's sort of neat.
You have seen so much, you have done so much, from being there on opening day as a guest to 24 hours later being there as a guest-facing cast member in a role that you designed and had created for you. You knew Walt, you interacted with Walt, you influenced Walt. You've done so much here in World. You are in Paris. You're a legend. You are a member of the Disneyland, the Club 55. You've seen and done so much. And of all the things, when you look back on your time with the company, is there any one thing, any one moment that you look back on most vividly? I can't say favorite because I'm sure there's so many, but most vividly or most fondly, and the one that sort of is most meaningful to you?
Working for WED, being Tom Sawyer, absolutely. But I had.
Because you were the only one, right?
No, they held a contest to replace me. So they had one replacement, and then after that, then there wasn't any more Tom Sawyers. But working in WED, watching things come from a storyboard concept to reality, to build it, to watch guests actually appreciate it and ride on it, and that thing is phenomenal. That was probably the cream de cream. The making the transition into warehousing. One of the things that the hardest thing was trying to get the people in the warehouse operation to feel part of the show. And what I did there is I went to the Institute, and we partnered with the Institute, and we brought people in to tour the warehouse operation because they got enamored with that, just like the people from Modern Material Handling. So we would bring people in and tour them through the warehouse. Well, I didn't do the tour in the warehouse. I, in turn, had the warehouse people tour the people in the warehouse. I did do a Q&A on it. Some of the things I do, once a month I do a Disney Heritage thing for RCID, Reedy Creek Improvement District. They decided to go through and retrain all their older employees along with new employees that were coming on board, and the manager of HR for them, who was a drinking buddy of mine, asked me if I would come share my story with them. I said, yeah, and that was three years ago, so every third Friday of the month I get to do that. I do a lot of speaking for Disney events. I do the Disneyland Fan Club several times, the college program. I do it for the ambassadors. I enjoy that. Now, one of the questions I normally get at the end of my presentation, and it's about an hour presentation, we're a little longer on this one, is have you ever thought about writing a book? And so I did. So if you want to hear the real long version of the story of Tom Nabbe, then you can pick up my book. It's available on Amazon.com, or you can go to my website, TomNabbe.com, if you want it personalized and autographed.
And I will link to that in the show notes. And I have one last question for you, because I want to sort of flip things a little bit, because now you come to the parks, you come to Magic Kingdom with your young granddaughter. Give me your impression now, coming to the parks as a guest versus when you were here as a cast member, from sort of helping to create that magic that we talk about to experiencing it and sharing it with your own grandkid.
Well, it's phenomenal. She's just a little over 2 right now, and I'm going, what is a 2-year-old going to know? Well, I tell you, she knows the characters, character breakfasts on property. She just loves them, eats them up. All the experiences in the park. One time here, and we went to Epcot, but we went down, and she's totally involved in Anna and Elsa and Olaf from Frozen, and to watch her, the interaction of her and Anna and Elsa down there is just, and the kids that play those characters do an excellent job also. But I know now why I work where I work, so I could get my main gate pass, so I could get her in on a daily basis if I want to, except for blackout dates.
Well, look, that happiness and that pride that you feel as a grandfather towards your granddaughter is the same thing that you, when you were being Tom Sawyer, gave to those parents and grandparents back in 1955. So, as a guest, as a parent, I thank you for everything that you've done to contribute to this Disney magic that we know and love so much. And I will tell Tom, you were worth the wait. You were worth waiting 4 years to get this interview done, because I could listen to your stories all day. Again, your book is fascinating and filled with so many more. And I appreciate you spending time today, and certainly for everything that you've done for us.
Super, Lou. And I'm sorry you had to wait 4 years, but I've been practicing. So you got the best of the best.
Excellent, Tom. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Irreverent, wild, that irresponsible child. I tried to teach him, but who can reach him? He never can be found. Leaves his trash around, just won't learn, and he just keeps turning away. Tom Sawyer, the devil's got him in tow. Tom Sawyer, he's grief and worry and woe. He's late for supper and late for school, and he's taking me for a fool. I'll bet Tom Sawyer will be the death of me yet.
It's time for our Walt Disney World Trivia Question of the Week, where I invite you to test your knowledge of Walt Disney World's history, or see how well you pay attention to the details, sometimes in what you see, sometimes in what you hear, occasionally in what you eat. And if you think you know the answer, you can enter via our online form for a chance to win a Disney Prize package. Of course, before we get to this week's question, we're going to go back, review last week's, and select our winner. So last week's question was about one of my personal favorite attractions in Walt Disney World. I think it's a quintessential, simple classic, the Tomorrowland Transit Authority / Wedway People Mover. There's so much that I love about this attraction, including the narration, and that's what your question was about last week. because I said that on the attraction you hear actually 6 different voices on the overhead narration, and I gave you not 1, but 2 of the 6 that you hear. You hear first the female safety announcer who asks you to please step carefully onto the moving platform, the hands, arms, feet, and legs, yada, yada, yada. Of course, there's also your male announcer who welcomes you aboard the Tomorrowland Transit Authority People Mover, your highway in the sky, sit back, relax, Grand Circle Tour, etc., etc. However, there's 4 others that I asked you to identify that you hear during your Grand Circle Tour of Tomorrowland. I want to first thank the over 1,200 of you that entered, either got this one correct or were very creative in your answers. Of course, the correct answers were Stitch, who says, I don't think so, as we coming up on his somewhat great escape. Mickey, that's right, it's out of this world, as you approach Star Traders. That was not meant to be a Mickey impression, by the way. Buzz Lightyear, who calls all Space Rangers to report to your Star Cruiser and join him on this daring space mission against the evil Emperor Zurg. And of course, Roz, and there's no way I'll try and do this when he says, yeah, very good, keep it moving, we're on a tight schedule here. So once again, thanks to all of you who entered, whether you got it correct or just had some fun with the question. Because again, last week you were playing for not just the 102 Ways to Save Money for an at Walt Disney World book, not just all 7 of my virtual audio Walking Tours the Magic Kingdom, both of which still on sale for $10 each in the WDW Radio shop, but I digress. But you were also playing for the Magic Band cover, you were playing for some WDW Radio stickers, a pop socket, and brand new, started last week, a shirt from our WDW Radio collection. If you go to wdwradio.com/shirts, you'll see our entire collection of not just WDW Radio logo shirts and some unique designs that we created ourselves, but some Disney, Marvel, Star Wars shirts as well. So when you enter the contest this week, make sure you include your shirt size as an option on the form. However, let's go back because last week's winner, randomly selected from all the correct entries, is Adam Kane. So Adam, congratulations. Because you used the online form, I do have your shirt size. I will get your prize package out to you right away. If you played last week and didn't win, that's okay, because here's your next chance to enter in this week's Walt Disney World Trivia Challenge. So last week, I really wanted to test your memory as to how well you listened to the overhead narration on the TTA/People Mover that you've probably heard dozens, if not hundreds of times. This week, I want to go a little bit simpler. Again, it's not what you hear, but what you see. Because one of my favorite attractions in Disney's Animal Kingdom is not just Flight of Passage or the Nomad Lounge, but it's Expedition Everest. I think it's a wonderful mix of storytelling, excitement, and details. And that's what your question's about this week. Because all you need to do is tell me simply, what is the name of the fictitious travel agency or the tour company that runs Expedition Everest? Right? Again, it's all based in story. There's a fictitious tour company that guides you on that steam donkey around and through the mountain. So you have until Sunday, March 4th, to go to WDWRadio.com, click on this week's podcast. There you will find the entry form. Again, you're going to play for the book, the tours, the Magic Band cover, the stickers, the pop socket, and a shirt from the WDW Radio collection. So good luck and have fun. That's going to do it for this week's show. Thank you so very much. I know how valuable your time is, and I appreciate you spending and sharing it with me this and every week. Thanks as always to some of the new and longtime members of the WDW Radio Nation family, including Michael Kell, Tom Azukas, Bob Ostrowski, Eric Covino, Smith Getterman, and Sue Passauer. I really appreciate each and every one of you. And if you want to not only help the show keep the lights on, but also get exclusive rewards every month, I create a new scavenger hunt. We have a private Facebook group. I'll send you a personalized WDW Radio Nation Magic Band cover. There's also Nation logo gear, t-shirts, monthly care packages from Walt Disney World, and we do an exclusive live video group call every month, as well as access to special events and more. To find out more, visit wdwradio.com/support, and don't forget that a portion of the proceeds of your contribution does go to our Dream Team project to benefit the Make-A-Wish Foundation of America. Please be sure and visit the site over at wdwradio.com for our daily blog posts, videos, subscribe to our newsletter, and lots more. Also, don't forget to be part of the conversation, be part of the community by joining our group over on Facebook. If you go to wdwradio.com/boxpeople, you can be part of our group, and also make sure you have notifications turned on either on the group or on our page, because I'd love for you to join me every Wednesday night for WDW Radio Live. I do a live video broadcast, an interactive chat where we can really have a two-way conversation. We talk about either the week's Disney news, random questions, we play 20 questions, there's contests, and you can call in with your questions and comments, and again, really make it very conversational. That's every Wednesday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern. You can watch and participate either in the WDW Radio Box People group or by liking our page at facebook.com/WDW Radio. Just make sure you turn on notifications and see first so you don't miss not just the weekly broadcasts, but the other ones that I do, oftentimes in the parks as well. Of course, you know I believe that nothing beats a handshake and a hug. That is why I continue to do monthly meetups every month in Walt Disney World. Thanks to everybody who came out, brave the heat, this past weekend to the Daily Poutine in Disney Springs. We had a great turnout. It was so great to see longtime friends put faces to names and meet some new friends as well. And congratulations to everybody who participated in the Princess Half Marathon weekend last weekend, both members of the running team as well as anybody who not just finished, but more importantly, having the strength and courage to line up at the start. I was so grateful to be able to be out there on the course, not getting in your way on the course, but being on the sidelines to help cheer you on. And thanks to everybody else who came out and joined me on the sidelines to help cheer all of the runners this weekend. Our next meet of the month in Walt Disney World will likely be Saturday, February 24th. I will have time and location and details on the WDW Radio page soon. If you are going to be in San Diego this week, I'm going to be speaking at Social Media Marketing World, and we'll be doing a meetup together on Thursday, March 1st at 6:30 p.m. in the lobby bar of the Manchester Grand Hyatt. If you go to facebook.com/Lou Mongello, I created an event there on my profile. Anyone and everyone is welcome to attend. I'd love to meet you out there if you are there. Obviously, I do a lot of meetups on the road as I travel to speak. And if I can come to speak at your conference, to your school, to your event, visit LouMongello.com. And more importantly, if I can help you individually turn your passion into your profession, turn that thing that you love into that thing that you do, I'm happy to work with you, get on a call with you. Again, you can find out more by visiting LouMongello.com. Thanks as always to Becky Mankin and the entire team over at Mousefan Travel, my official and recommended travel provider. It doesn't matter if you're going to a Disney destination or anywhere in the world, she and her team of agents will give you the best possible prices, all available discounts, and all at no cost to you. You can find them over at mousefantravel.com, and then go subscribe to Celebrations Magazine by visiting celebrationspress.com. As always, my friend, and you are my friend, whether we have met yet or not. Again, you prove that when I did get to meet so many of you this past weekend at the Meet of the Month. But all I ask is that if you like the show, please help spread the word. Let others know about it. That's the way that our community and family will grow, not by putting out ads. And it's by you inviting your friends and your family to be part of this incredible community that you have created. So if you like this or have a favorite episode, tweet out a link to it, share it with your friends over on Facebook, and if you can, take just 30 seconds to rate and review the show over on iTunes. That's incredibly helpful as well. Thanks to you, we have more than 1,500 five-star reviews. Would love to keep them coming. I want to thank some recent reviewers like the Andrew Raven, who says, "You found it." WDW Radio is not only the best podcast on any subject, but also one of the best pieces of content available in any form, anywhere. If you're a Disney fan or a fan of positivity in life in general, and you're looking for your home, you found it. Here's to another 500, Lou. Deftones 3119 says this is the best source of information, discussion, and news of all things Disney. I'm so thrilled that I came across the WDW Radio podcast a few months ago while browsing for Disney-related discussions. The podcast offers such a variety of topics, including top 10s, reviews, vacations, and of course, my favorite, food talk. We just bonded right there, see? I only wish I found the podcast before my trip to Walt Disney World back in 2015 and 16. I feel included in a fan community, even though I live 3,000 miles from Florida. Deftones, that's the most important part of what we do. The family cannot wait for what the future of WDW Radio has in store. Listen immediately if you want to immerse yourself with all things Disney. Keep up the great work, Lou and family. And Mouse Ears 15 says, wonderful. I absolutely love the WDW Radio Show. I stumbled upon this by accident about a week ago, and I love Lou's knowledge and expertise at the parks and just enjoy listening to lengthy discussions about various topics within the Walt Disney World Resort. Thanks to all of you who have rated and reviewed the show. If you want to do it, again, just search for WDW Radio in iTunes or go to www.radio.com/iTunes. It'll give you instructions and a link on exactly how to do it. And finally, and most important, thank you for your time, for your attention, for your love, support, and the friendship that you extend me, both in person and just by being here. I don't think you realize how your presence and your attention and the fact that you're listening this far has given me an extraordinary life. And that is exactly how I would describe it. And that's what you need to do, right? You need to put the extra into ordinary. Always. Don't just do what's expected or required or ordinary, right? Whatever you do in your job or your home or your relationships, always give and do more and exceed those expectations. Infuse all of your efforts with importance and value and be adventurous and be better and set an example for others. And most importantly, have a great, great week. So until next time, see ya.
Hey, Lou, this is Beth Strickland from Brooklyn, New York, but currently waddling out of the boathouse after quite possibly the best lunch of my life. I had the cheeseburger with the pimento cheese on it. That was to die for. The wedge salad, which is like huge. And because I'm gluten-free, they have a special gluten-free warm brownie with ice cream and chocolate sauce and raspberry sauce all over it that is to die for. And you don't have to be gluten-free to get it. Just ask for it. But Scott was my server, and he was amazing. And he's like, oh, yeah, who's in here all the time? So I don't know if you knew this, but his father came down here and was one of the people who worked on building Epcot. I think on the construction is. So he's got some stories. You should talk to him. But anyway, it's amazing, sunny weather down here. Loving it. Loving that I got out of New York before the snow. And just thank you for the recommendation for Boathouse, because that dessert alone changed my life. So have a wonderful day. Sorry, have a magical day. Take care. Bye.
Hey, Lou. It's Christine Morrison from Flowertown, PA. I just listened to your latest podcast of your review of the Nomad Lounge, and boy, will I be going there. Sounds amazing, awesome. I'm definitely a big wine person, so all that wonderful red wine sounds so good. Also, I want to remind everybody, at the end of the podcast, because this week, Lou is sometimes adds a little tidbit at the end. That man's playing guy. See it, but we did. What movie is that from? The Avengers. Iron Man says it. And I love that those little tidbits that you put at the end sometimes. So if you are listening to the podcast and you don't always follow it to the end, you should, because sometimes he adds a little something extra, which is really, really fun. So thanks, Lou. Enjoy listening to you, and I'll see you guys in the box tomorrow night. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.
Hi, Lou. This is Mike and Laura from Minnesota. Just calling to just landed here at Bay Lake Tower for 6 days, then going to the Beach Club for 6 days and wrapping up our annual visit at the Fort Wilderness Campgrounds before heading back to cold Minnesota. The Disney magic has already set in. Figured I'd give you a call and let you know. Thank you for all you do. Bye.
Hi, Lou. My name is Jeffrey Johnson, and I'm calling you from good old Bixby, Oklahoma here. And I'm actually on my way to my first day working with the Disney store at our local mall here. And I just wanted to give you a call and say thank you so much. I started listening to your podcast, or not your podcast, your audio guides a couple years back. I started with the Adventureland one on iTunes, and since the first one I listened to, I have been hooked on them. I've listened to the audio guides countless times, and every time it just gives me such a feeling as though I'm actually at Disney. I'm actually in the park, and it brings that joy into my heart that only that Disney can bring out in you. And just recently, I've been going through a really rough time in my life. It hasn't been much fun. And I started listening to your podcast because, I knew that they were there, but I couldn't quite get into them. But I started listening to them about a week or so ago, and I have been listening to them non-stop lately. Be it your review on Pandora, the World of Avatar, or your top 10s with Little Timmy Foster. Those ones are my favorite. You two are hysterical. And every time I listen to them, it brings that Disney joy back into my heart. You guys, just by listening to these podcasts, you have been able to make me smile and make me laugh at a time where I've been looking for so much to just help get me to smile once through the day. And every single time I listen to a podcast, it brings that smile to my face. It makes me want to go back to Disney. It makes me laugh. And I thank you so much for doing this. I listen to you guys while I'm in the car on the way to work, or I used to work at a golf course outside, so I could listen to them at work. And now that I'm actually on my way to my first day of being a Disney cast member, I have no idea how long I've wanted to say that. Every time I listen to them, it gets me so excited, and you and Little Timmy and all the other people that you have on there talk so highly of the cast members and how much joy they're able to bring to the vacation. And I do everything I can to stop and talk to cast members when I'm at Disney or just the local store.
Hello, Lou Mongello. It's Darlene Nagy from West Seneca, New York. And I am calling in to say I just got back from meeting my new nephew. He is so adorable, and my little goddaughter is getting so big. And we were discussing going to Walt Disney World in a few years with both of them. I am so excited. And I am calling in to say I am, as of tomorrow, 90 days out to my birthday trip to Walt Disney World, and you are 118 days tomorrow to going on that Alaska cruise. I hope everybody has such a fabulous time, and they're getting their packing and buying their things very slowly, so it's not a sticker shock at the end of what they are going to be planning. If you do it slowly now, like buying your hat and gloves and that, if you're not in the cold weather area like this girl is, you can definitely make everything work out perfect. That's what we did. And then I have only 223 days until I go down to Florida with our BFF family, the Sternbergs. Can't wait. Have a wonderful, magical week, and see you real soon. Love you all.
Yeah!
Tom's a good boy, Tom is kind, Tom holds wonders in his mind. Tom's an orphan, can't you see? He